I love trees, and I'm very lucky because we live near a wonderful arboretum, and Sundays usually I go there with my wife and now with my 4-year-old, and we climb in the trees, we play hide and seek. The second school I was at had big trees too. It had a fantastic tulip tree, I think was the biggest in the country, and it also had a lot of wonderful bushes and vegetation around it, around the playing fields. And one day I was grabbed by some of my classmates and taken in the bushes. I was stripped, I was attacked, I was abused, and this came out of the blue. Now the reason I say that, because afterwards I was thinking, well, I went back into the school, I felt dirty, I felt betrayed, I felt ashamed, but mainly I felt powerless. And 30 years later, I was sitting in an airplane next to a lady called Veronica, who came from Chile. And we were on a human rights tour, and she was starting to tell me what it was like to be tortured. And from my very privileged position, this was the only reference point that I had. And it was an amazing learning experience, because for me, human rights have been something which I had, a part-time interest, but mainly it was something that happened to other people over there. But I got a phone call from Bono in 1985, and as you know, he's a great singer, but he's a magnificent hustler, and very hard guy to say no to. And he was saying, it was after I'd done the Biko song, we're going to do a tour for Amnesty, you have to be on it. And really that was the first time that I'd been out and started meeting people who'd watched their family being shot in front of them, who'd had a partner thrown out of an airplane into an ocean. And suddenly this world of human rights arrived in my world, and I couldn't really walk away in quite the same way before. And so I got involved with this tour, which was for Amnesty, and then in '88 I took over Bono's job, trying to learn how to hustle. I didn't do it as well, but we managed to get Houston, Doris, Sting, Tracy Chapman, and Bruce Springsteen to go around the world for Amnesty, and it was an amazing experience. And once again, I got an extraordinary education, and it was the first time, really, that I'd met a lot of these people in the different countries, and these human rights stories became very physical. And again, I couldn't really walk away quite so comfortably. But the thing that really amazed me, that I had no idea, was that you could suffer in this way and then have your whole experience, your story, denied, buried, and forgotten. And it seemed that whenever there was a camera around, or a video or film camera, it was a great deal harder to do for those in power to bury the story. And Reebok set up a foundation after these Human Rights Now tours, and there was a decision then, we made a proposal for a couple of years about trying to set up a division that was going to give cameras to human rights activists. It didn't really get anywhere, and then the Rodney King incident happened, and people thought, okay, if you have a camera in the right place at the right time, or perhaps the wrong time, depending who you are, then you can actually start doing something, and campaigning and being heard, and telling people about what's going on. So Witness was started in '92, and it's since given cameras out in over 60 countries, and we campaign with activist groups and help them tell their story. And in fact, I will show you in a moment one of the most recent campaigns, and I'm afraid it's a story from Uganda. And although we had a wonderful story from Uganda yesterday, this one isn't quite so good. And in the north of Uganda, there are something like 1.5 million internally displaced people, people who are not refugees in another country, but because of a civil war which has been going on for about 20 years, they have nowhere to live. And 20,000 kids have been taken away to become child soldiers. And the International Criminal Court is going after 5 of the leaders of the, what's it called? I forget the name of the army. It's the Lord's Resistance Army, I believe. But the government also doesn't have a clean sheet. So if we could run the first video.
Karma ti gang uno ayela pamun ma pakonya ya burki karma ore kam kan kong wa tem bur ma be etong yunge dong mon pagamen da chak ti lu gi maraj
mon yitu pie yo ne me wa akwe anda je ada nya mana evelyn je dog du nya mana
chi wa beru pen chi wa beru pen ay ngar chi le bedo a bien
a char be ya lomba aya ngar chi ti e ba dir kircha aya e mo beru kwa ni uti na ga char bergi e ba aya e mo bergi e na tinga be beru kwa do kala
kay mon dong a ku do gi ma che ku chi ku re ni yon ngi ti go ba kwa ni me ma ter la da pe ni wa tiêu gọi vào nó miệng tiệt lọt đang vào cái mò bè cái mò tiền nó đang chán cái đấy cái mò bè cái nghe cái lọt nó vào cái nát vào này nó
Yo chumoni manyo dan ma lo kire no dan ma la pien e don wang char e no chama don gu chiela e no to lo yar en sia en chi don por ma da por pin don go tamni nyo don gu chiela don maraj e si do cha ngoi don bi chi ko jo ma don go no go cha wat yo ti.
So torture is not something that always happens on other soil. In my country this week we've been looking at pictures of British soldiers beating up young Iraqis. We've got Abu Ghraib, we've got Guantanamo Bay, and I had a driver on my way to Newark Airport, and he told me a story that in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., he'd been taken out of his home in Queens, taken to a place in the Midwest, that he was interrogated and tortured and returned to the street 4 weeks later because he had the same, he was Middle Eastern and he had the same name as one of the 9/11 pilots. And that may or may not be true. I didn't think he was a liar though. And I think if we look around the world, as well as the polar ice caps melting, human rights, which have been fought for many hundreds of years in some cases, are also eroding very fast. And that is something that we need to take a look at and maybe start campaigning for. I mean, here too, one of our partners was it Van Jones and the Books Not Bars project. They have managed with their footage in California to change the youth correction systems employed. It's much, I think, more humane methods are being looked at how you should lock up young kids, and that's questionable to start off. And there's a story of Mr. Morales just down the road. Excuse me, Mr. Gabriel, would you mind if we delayed your execution a little bit? No, not at all. No problem. Take your time. But this, surely, whoever that man is, whatever he's done, this is cruel and unusual punishment. Anyway, Witness has been trying to arm the brave people who often put their lives at risk around the world with cameras, and I'd like to show you just a little more of that. Thank you. Witness was born of technological innovation, in the sense that the small portable DV cam was really what allowed it to come into being. And we've also been trying to get computers out to the world so that groups can communicate much more effectively, campaign much more effectively. But now we have a wonderful possibility which is given to us from the mobile phone with the camera in it, because that is cheap, it's ubiquitous, and it's moving fast all around the world. And it's very exciting for us. And so the dream is that we could have a world in which anyone who has anything bad happen to them of this sort has a chance of getting their story uploaded, being seen, being watched, but that they really know that they can be heard, that there will be a giant website, maybe a little like Google Earth, and you could fly over and find out the realities of what's going for the world's inhabitants. In a way, what this technology is allowing is really that a lot of the problems of the world can have a human face, that we can actually see who's dying of AIDS or who's being beaten up for the first time, and we can hear their stories. And in a way, the blogger culture, if we can move that into these sort of fields, I think we can really transform the world in all sorts of ways. There could be a new movement growing up, rising from the ground, reaching for the light, and growing strong, just like a tree. Thank you.